Welcome to week 2 of organizational behavior. I'm your online instructor, Diana Block. And this week, our assignments and discussion are going to center around chapters 3 and 4. Chapter 3 is going to talk about decision making, and then chapter 4, we start talking about motivation. So let's look at chapter 3. In chapter 3, first of all, your discussion for this week is going to ask you to complete tables 3.2 and 3.3 in your textbook, and then your discussion is going to revolve around what scores you got on those tests or those surveys, how you compare to the norms, and whether your scores basically make sense to you as far as the decision making roles that you've had, and providing examples of that. So let's go ahead and talk about those decision-making styles. Now, once you complete those tables, you'll find out that um, you will have a score for each of these decision-making styles. And what the scores do is just tell you which you are most comfortable with, what is your preferred style of decision making. All of us will use part of each of these styles at different times. Some problems that you're solving require you to be more of an analytical style, so you'll lean more on that at that time. Others might require directive, behavioral, or conceptual styles, and so based on the particular problem that we're solving, we will call on each of these skills for decision making. That being the case, each of us still has some natural tendencies as far as our preferred style, what we naturally prefer to do. And often what we find is we gravitate towards careers that will place us in a position to use our preferred style of decision making. So within your career, you might find that you're usually using a specific style of decision making because of the career field that you're in, and the fact that you prefer that type of decision making may be part of what it led you to that career. So let's talk about what these decision making styles actually mean. So the analytical decision making style is someone who enjoys problem solving. We all have to solve problems, but this person actually enjoys digging into large volumes of data, going through the numbers, going through the details, to narrow down all of the information to that one best solution to the problem at hand. Often they might like to work alone. They're just like them and their research. And they do their work and they go through the data and they use that to make a decision. So they're very focused on technical aspects, the task part of doing the research and finding the information, and also very logical in their solution to the problem. They're going to decide by eliminating things what is the best way to solve this problem. Now, you also have a conceptual person who looks at things with a more broad terms and a more futuristic approach, future thinker, and they may see that there are multiple solutions to the same problem. There's not just one single best solution. They're more creative, and maybe artistic with their decision making, and are looking for creative ways to solve the problem, maybe differently than what logic would necessarily direct you to. And so that is more of a conceptual idea of thinking. So that is the conceptual. Should have put these in the order I was going to talk about them, but that's the conceptual person. They're, rather than tasks and technical details, conceptual thinkers or decision makers are more concerned with the people and social aspect, more so than an analytical person. But again, each of us has some of these tendencies, so none of us are completely one or completely the other. Now, let's move on to directive. In directive, this person relies heavily on the rules. They follow the guidelines. They enjoy having a clear amount of instructions on what needs to be done. This allows them to react quickly. They see a situation, they based on their experience and knowledge of the rules, they make a decision on what needs to be done. They tend to react quickly, somewhat aggressively with dealing with problems. A lot of times they are heavy on verbal communication, and so they expect the results based on the fact that they know the rules, they've implemented them, and they expect those rules to produce results for them. So again, they're more directed, they're more focused on the tasks and technical concerns. They assign tasks based on the rules, things like that. Um, the last one that I'll mention is the behavioral. This is the fourth decision making style in the table. And in behavioral, again, this person is more directed towards the people and social aspects of decision making rather than tasks and technical. The behavioral decision makers are very persuasive. They're really good communicators. These are the people who like to have meetings and like to get everyone on the same page and have everyone have buy-in to the decision. So a lot of times they use their persuasive skills to bring everyone together so that the group is making a joint decision that everybody in the group can live with. Um, so they're not relying as much on data as on the group decision making and making sure that they're being supportive of the group, and they also would like the group support when they make decisions. So very different decision making styles. You may see some people like this or like any of these in your workplaces, and you may be able to identify which of these applies to yourself. But definitely, when you go through the table, it will give you a score for each of these, and you'll be able to see, based on your survey results, what it appears that is your preferred decision making styles. And you will use this information to lead your discussion this week and talk about what your scores were and how that relates to the type of careers that you're seeking or the type of jobs that you've had in the past. Now, as we move on, and you read all the way through chapter 3, you're going to find there's a lot of information actually about decision making, a lot of different models for making decisions, and explaining a lot of different terms in there. When you get to your homework assignment for this week, the first part of it is over Google. There's an article at the back of chapter 3 that explains how Google makes decisions. Now, it's going to explain how they physically make them. They have meetings, they do this, and who's there. So when the question is asking you, how does Google make decisions? It's not asking you to repeat what's in the article. It's asking you to take a lot of these terms and concepts that are discussed in chapter 3 and determine which of them apply to the way Google makes decisions. So in your response to the homework question, I'm looking for you to use either these that are shown on the screen or some other concepts from chapter 3 that explain how Google makes decisions, not to repeat that they're a triumvirate, which is already in the article. So some of the decision making information you're going to see in chapter 3, they're going to talk about convergent thinking and divergent thinking, whereas convergent thinking is where you're applying logic and narrowing down the solutions to the best one, whereas convergent thinking is where you might look at multiple paths to solving a problem. Then you'll also read about programmed decisions or non-programmed. Programmed decisions are following some specific rules, whereas non-program decisions might just use your personal judgment. So different styles or different methods of coming to a decision, none of which is right or wrong. The decision style inventory is the tables 3.2 and 3.3 that we just talked about that you're going to use for your discussion. Some of that might also apply to Google. Then you've got intuition is another way you can make a decision, and most of us know what that is. We're just kind of unconsciously integrating our experience, goals, and values into our direct reasoning. And you also will read about formal and informal reasoning in chapter 3. And in formal reasoning, you're using logic again to make a decision, and in informal reasoning, um, you're using some debatable methods, and some of the rules might have formal reasoning, but you might use other things like intuition. And so there's several here, and I don't want to run out of time. There's several decision making terms, concepts, theories in chapter 3. So the idea on the homework is you're going to determine which of these from your reading applies to Google and the way that they make decisions at Google. Um, okay, so let's see. What's left is chapter 4. And chapter 4 is a great chapter. Let me spend a couple minutes on that before we run out of time. The second part of your assignment, your homework assignment, is an article about a company called Hiscox, and they do certain things to motivate their employees. And in chapter 4, you're going to read about motivation, intrinsic and extrinsic motivators. Intrinsic motivators are the inner influences that cause a person to act. So by inner influences, we're talking about the things inside of you as a person, your personal values, your beliefs about what you're doing. These are those things within you that make you motivated to do a good job. Now, extrinsic motivators are outside forces that cause you to act or motivate you. So, things outside of yourself that cause you to act is the fact that you'll get a paycheck. That's an extrinsic motivator. That you'll get a reward. Your boss might tell you good job. Those are extrinsic motivators. So at Hiscox, the firm does several things, and there are some intrinsic motivators that are discussed also as far as the employees' values and beliefs in the article. So the article questions ask you to identify the intrinsic and extrinsic motivators at Hiscox, at that firm. So based on your reading through the chapter and learning what the differences are between intrinsic and extrinsic motivators, that's how you will answer those questions. The article will tell you about various things the company does to motivate, and you'll classify those things as intrinsic or extrinsic. Some other things you'll read about in chapter 4 are the McClellan's theory of needs, which explains that needs have a hierarchy and how that relates to motivation. And there's several other concepts that are great information about motivation. We're actually going to continue talking about motivation again next week because it's such a great topic and there's more than one chapter on it. But I wanted to give you just some ideas to start with as far as what are some really important sections of chapter 3 and 4 that you can use to answer your discussion question as well as to complete your homework assignment. If you have any questions, I will be glad to talk with you on instant chat through the Blackboard IM, or send me an email anytime and I'll respond quickly. And I look forward to talking with you in the discussion area this week.